a lot of aerial bombardment, Abhijit, on the Gaza metro. How much of that tunnel network do you think has been demolished? How much still exists? Or is it impossible to say with any authority unless the IDF actually gets there and sees for itself? And then there's the possibility of IEDs, landmines, and all kinds of booby traps in these tunnels.
Look, you can't really be demolishing the tunnel network. It is a complete city. It is an underground city. We have actually seen Israeli thermal camera images in the north on the Lebanese border of, Hezbollah cities built underground. We suspect that the cities in Gaza are similar. It would almost be the same size as Gaza. These are extremely sophisticated tunnels. They have ventilation, they have air conditioning, they have all kinds of things. They have lockout chambers even. So, if you use, for example, fuel air explosives, which is to say thermobaric explosives down there, which kind of suck out the air and, turn the air you breathe into as incendiary. Even with that, it's going to be very difficult. You need the ground campaign to go in. What the air campaign is doing right now is it's taking out concentrations of weapons. You'll notice a lot of the hits are producing very significant secondary explosions, which are sympathetic detonations of ammunition stored in there. The others are, intelligence collection centers. So, for example, the Gaza Islamic University was almost like an R&D center for where new kinds of rockets and especially the guidance mechanisms were being developed out there. They have a very sophisticated network like this. I think the air campaign is primarily focusing on removing the ground targets. It is the ground campaign that will focus on clearing out the tunnels, and that is going to be extremely painful. I know for a fact the Israelis have mapped out a considerable amount of this underground city realistically, but the problem with tunnel systems like this is you actually have to get in there and do a lot of the things, because if they're hidden under buildings, you can't really tell. There's only so much LIDAR or ground penetrating radar can tell you with buildings on top. So all of this will have to happen once they go in, and then we can get a sort of time gauge on what the task at hand is.
How much of that tunnel network, General Hasnain, do you think is being destroyed? Because the Israelis don't need to destroy the entire tunnel network. They just need to destroy the key arteries so that you can't go from one junction in the tunnel network to the other. How much of that do you think is being taken care of during the aerial bombardment?
See, Rahul, no one really knows what is exactly the layout of the tunneling system, but I suspect that the kind of conflict initiation that they have carried out, Hamas has carried out, they seem to be confident of being able to fight underground for quite some time. That seems to be the center of gravity of their entire resistance, it seems. The manner in which the Israelis have gone about bombing, I have my doubts. You see, from a normal understanding of an infantry soldier, 3 feet earth is normally sufficient for an artillery bomb landing on you. Now, in this case, you've had artillery, you've had lots and lots of missiles and rockets. Let's say even if 5 feet to 6 feet worth of earth, packed earth, and concretized on top of that, if it is there, then the effect is going to be very, very marginal inside. I suppose only when we inspect this at the end of this war will we really finally come to know as to what is the terminal effect of all the bombing which the Israelis have been doing. But I've got another point to add here, just to introduce it as a wild card. We've been talking about Iranian presence there, Iranian influence on the Hamas, etc. We've forgotten the aspect of ISIS. You see, this genocidal initiation obviously smacks of a ISIS advisory. And it seems that ISIS, after, its distribution into different conflict centers around the world, one of them being Afghanistan, has also found its way here. And possibly some of them are in advisory role.
Okay.
Now, the kind of experience they've had in Fallujah, the kind of experience that they've had in Mosul, is all available to the Hamas here.
Well, very dangerously placed this. We will track very carefully what happens. For the time being, I want to thank our guests, our reporters on the ground. We'll keep tracking the situation in Israel and in Gaza very carefully. My colleague Shiv Arur is at the Shura military base in Israel, where they showed a lot of the videos shot by the Hamas soldiers when they came in. Here is Shiv's latest ground report.
These ordinary-looking containers hold the horrors of Hamas. terrifying proof of the brutality that was unleashed on October 7th.
The blue bag that you see right here is the body of a child. Somebody's kid. I don't know what more proof the world needs for the atrocities that happened.
This is the Shura military base in central Israel, which has been turned into a makeshift morgue. These are the victims of Hamas carnage.
Container upon container holding the remains of hundreds of people who were massacred by the Hamas terrorists on October the 7th. We've just been briefed by dentists, police officers, forensic professionals who say that it's been difficult, and even 18 days after the fact, it's difficult to identify many of these bodies. They believe that with truck after truck bringing in bodies, this is a work that they owe their friends, their loved ones, the relatives of those who are dead, because the basic that they deserve is the beginning of closure. In each one of these containers, there are perhaps tens, hundreds of bodies. Some of them just heads, some of them just ribs, some of them just brains, some of them just dismembered bodies, all simply waiting to be identified, whether by a fingernail or a jawbone. The remnants of October the 7th, all packed in bags, neatly refrigerated in metal containers, because that's what it finally comes down to.
Hundreds still remain unidentified.
Mothers, children, fathers, family members. They have not yet been identified, and their family members are waiting to hear what has happened to them. Some of them are completely charred. Some of them are dismembered, their bodies mutilated by a terrorist organization who acted not just against Israel, but against humanity.
Some of these bags just contain dismembered body parts.
There are bags arriving here with body parts. Some only with a brain, some only with ribs, things that are sick, that no human should see.
Doctors and forensic experts have been working tirelessly to identify bodies. The smell of death hangs heavy in the air.
Point where I want to cry, but I don't know if I can cry because I'm in the middle of a mission and there are families that are counting on our work in order to be able to bury their loved ones. We have seen every type of mutilation and disgrace to bodies that is possible. Heads chopped off of bodies, pre and post-mortem, children and full families burned, grenade thrown into a bomb shelter to just splatter a family all over. I'm sorry for being that graphic, but that's just how it is. And every single time you open a body bag, you have no idea what's going to fall out. A jaw, a tooth, some ligaments, burnt flesh, full families fused together by fire.
This is hands down the hardest thing I have ever experienced in my life, and I speak not just for myself, but for my colleagues as well, both dentists, both anyone who's involved here in the police, in the military. This is a Holocaust for us. None of us has ever seen, felt, smelt any of this. The number of people, the number of victims of innocent women, children, babies, elderly, the nature of the injuries, of the torture that these people have been through. They have been shot, and they have been axed, and they have been burnt alive, and they have been cut. And this is something that is etched in my mind forever.
This is what Israel wants the world to see.
Nobody had to explain that terrorists committed 9/11, the Twin Towers in New York. No one had to explain the ISIS attack in Paris and the attacks across the globe. But here we are, here I am, opening trailers with bodies. 784 bodies have been identified so far, so that you understand the amount. And 688 have been transferred for burial. These were people's family members. Parents will not hear their kids' laughter. Children will not get to hug their parents or get a kiss goodnight.
Hundreds identified, but several hundreds more still unaccounted for.
These two containers that have just been opened here at the Shura military base contain some of the bodies that have been brought here that are unidentified. Many of them are dismembered, many of them are charred beyond recognition, and a gargantuan effort to identify each and every one of those bodies is currently underway by police, forensic teams, dentists, doctors, and of course, the Israeli Defense Forces. There is a humanitarian operation that's on, keeping in touch with each and every family so that they get closure and are able to bury their loved ones. And this is just two containers. There's an entire lineup of containers all through the Shura military base where bodies are kept. We're told that there are hundreds, perhaps 1,000 bodies that are there, many of them of Israeli soldiers as well, most of them of Israeli civilians. There are several bodies of babies as well, we're told, that are in these containers. They've been kept open for a very, very short time, obviously, because they're refrigerated and they need to be preserved for forensic reasons. But here on India Today, we always show you the frontline story. And this is an image that Israel wants the world to see, to remind the world about the barbarity that was perpetrated by Hamas terrorists on innocent people all across this country. Shiv Arur at the Shura military base in central Israel for India Today.